Hello everybody. I just finished a nice long workout and I'm feeling really warm and comfortable and charged up, and I thought I'd make a video, a short one, sort of addressing the last video I made, which was about Baguazhang rolling step, and add some more context to that. So Baguazhang is a martial art that enjoys a wide cross-section of participants. So it can be practiced as a social event, it can be practiced for performance, for health and fitness, and or for a martial art, which is what I like to focus on. But all of those things have been found to be things that a lot of people have benefited from. And so in the practice of Baguazhang and most traditional martial arts, the context that they're taught in is very wide. And most of the teachers that are good are able to address many of those areas. And so you'll find people that have gone to the same club that almost have a completely different away on what the Sifu is teaching. Sometimes that leads to conflict, but I think most of us understand that we all go to class with different needs, and hopefully those are the context that we're looking for is addressed. So it's kind of funny sometimes, but that's just the way it is. And I was lucky. My Sifus always understood that I was interested in the martial aspect of the arts and health, and others too, but mostly the martial. And they were able to help me, and they were glad to bring me up along that path. So, and I continue along that path. So my Shifu for Baguazhang, the one that I studied the longest with, his name was Yang Guotai. He was from Beijing, and brought the Liu Bin kind of branch of Baguazhang with him to here in Vancouver, and that's what I studied the most. And he's passed away some years ago, and since then I've studied with other teachers and learned some stuff from Yin style and Liang style, and just trying to get a bigger picture of what is Baguazhang, what did Dong Hai Chuan really know. So every subgroup, like Yin style or Chung style, are just subsections of the whole, I think. So anyway, I keep growing. So Yang Guotai, he had two really great pieces of advice that I'd like to pass on, and so he recommended that if you want to learn Baguazhang as a martial art, you should follow what he called the heart method. And what he defined as the heart method was that he teaches you forms, and he teaches you one-on-one techniques, and you practice with your classmates and that sort of thing. But that's sort of just on the surface. What you need to do, according to his heart method, is that you need to internalize what you've learned, and test it. Like, test it with wrestlers, with boxers, with mixed martial artists of all types, and what you do is that you don't go and learn the other method. You go home and you think, like, where was I weak? What didn't I understand? And search for the things that actually bring the art to life in you, in your body, with your mindset, and develop that way. So in the end, all that a teacher can do is kind of lift up the blanket and let you see what's underneath, but you have to go in there and figure things out for yourself. And according to my teacher, there is no other way to actually learn martial art. So, I mean, if you go to class, you might do a lot of one-on-one exercises with people who are, they're not really giving you any pressure. They're kind of in agreement with what you're practicing. You're kind of helping each other. But that's not really martial art yet. It's interesting, it's a lot of fun, but it's not really martial art. Or you might be doing your forms and getting really beautiful performances, but again, that's not the martial art aspect of it. So the heart method, that's what he recommended. Personal experience, take what you can understand, make it real for yourself, and grow according to the teachings of your style from that. So that was one thing that I followed and found very useful, and I encourage my students to do the same. So the second piece of advice that he gave me was that the idea that all martial arts, in terms of proficiency, come down to two things. One is power. How do you generate and use power? And the second thing is, how do you generate and control momentum? They're related, but they're far enough apart that they're sort of separate studies. So if you have a martial art and you like, for example, striking, if you don't have power, it doesn't matter how often you can touch your opponent with your fist or palm or foot or whatever, it's just a dance. I don't know. That's how I like to put it, but it's not real. It's that if you don't have power, you can't use your striking art. And it's really the same with grappling. You need a kind of power to subdue an opponent, submit an opponent, I guess, to wrestle them to the ground. It takes great strength and power to do that. It's a different kind of power, and every art has its own unique kind of power that you need to be proficient in. And the other side is momentum, because you're in motion. And so sometimes if you're a striker, you hit, sometimes you miss, sometimes you're on the way to delivery, things get in your way, you have to change, but you have to be in enough of control of your momentum that you can change easily from one point to another. And some of the practice in Baguazhang is done very, very slow, very, very almost gentle, but there's not one hair on your body that you can't identify. And if for example, anything touches you, and you'll feel a change in momentum, and the whole body is united in this kind of practice. If something touches your foot, you feel it in your hand as well. So it makes you very sensitive to changes in momentum. And that's a big part of our branch of Baguazhang, is to join and to feel changes in momentum in your opponent, so you know what they're doing, rather than only relying on eyesight, or mostly eyesight, I guess. So this is like a heightened sense of touch that we bring into the practice. So that's like another side of using momentum. So there's like feeling your opponent's momentum, and feeling and being able to understand your own momentum, and being able to control both. So those are the two bottom lines to all martial arts, according to my Shifu, and I've contemplated it for a long time, and I kind of agree. Everywhere I look, I see that as being true. So I invite you to contemplate that and see for yourself if it's true, and if you believe it is, then maybe you can structure your training a little bit to address that more if you're not already doing that. So back to the point of this video is the rolling step that I demonstrated in my last video, and that's the one for me. So the rolling step, it's kind of like this. And in the last video I spoke about the 8 energies in that step, or even in mud walking. A lot of people, including myself, teach mud walking. Right? It's a kind of step where your foot remains kind of flat on the ground as you walk. And so that particular kind of training, in my opinion, is not for actual combat. But what it does is, because you're not bending your knee, or largely because you're not bending your knee to take a step forward, in fact, you're not even lifting up your foot, it kind of forces you to lift your waist or your hip or your kidney. People address it differently, but it's like if you're wading through water or through mud, you have to use your hip to kind of pull your leg through it, and that's sort of where it gets its name from. But what it's doing is it's training your dantian, or your center of mass, this area of your body, to move, and it's you gain more control over your center of mass. But also, if you think in terms of chi, that's the field where your chi rests, and so you're able to mobilize and move your chi more. So this, and gradually in every movement, even these movements, you kind of want to be able to move, connect your center of mass to every movement you make, even your walking motions. So that's a big thing about mud walking. But in my opinion, once you're able to control your center of mass and connect your movements to it, then mud walking is no longer useful. It's maybe a good exercise to every now and then to sort of keep everything there in shape, but I don't believe it's useful otherwise. In the rolling step, you still have that. You still, I think that in every step that you use in Baguazhang, you should be using your waist to move your legs. And it's no exception with the rolling step. So, that said, the 8 energies are closely tied to that, but there's 2 that I think are fundamental. And I think I might have touched on the 2 in the last video. And, I think it's the case that if you have these 2, then you should focus on the other ones. But until you have these 2, I don't think the other ones really are going to be too useful to train. And they're important, but first things first. So the first 2, the first one is to push off of this leg, and the second one is to, we call it rub with this leg. And again, rub for us is like stepping on a shovel and the shovel rubbing itself into the ground. So you combine this push with this rubbing motion, and that should be in every step. Right? Push, rub, push, rub, push, rub. And that's, it's like pushing yourself down a stream on a raft with a pole. You're standing on the pole, on the raft, and push with the pole and push yourself forward. So I think that's, those 2 aspects of walking are really 2 important things to work on in the step. And they translate into all the strikes. So, for example, you forward, double strike, pulls back. Maybe even if you're just using punches, translates into the punch. So there is arm movement, but the arm movement is not where the power is. That's just controlling how the power kind of sinks into the target. But the real power is coming from these 2 motions, the push and the rub. So there's other energies inside of that too that can increase that. But until you have these 2 in our martial art, then the other ones are not so useful. They'll never be that large. And all the techniques happen while you're walking, while you're in motion. So, right, walk around here. So that's a kind of Yanzhou from the first palm change. Yanzhou, right? So I'm going to switch contexts here, right? This one, but so this starts off as the name is Hangzhou, and it's sort of a horizontal elbow, but really you have 3 points here, here, and here. Any one of these can make contact, and if you have the push and the rub in your step, then all of these can create a lot of power. Yeah, and so I had Yanzhou, Hangzhou, and knock a person off of a moving horse. So these are kind of a backhand type of strike, but they're slightly different. This one, right, it's a little bit different than this one. And these are all from the first palm change. So you have Yanzhou, Hangzhou, take the person off of a moving horse. And here you have Yizhong, again with a step. This is a very nice strike that people usually don't see coming, right? You're controlling here, there's a hand conversation going on here, and this one can kind of sneak underneath. Flowers under leaves while you're turning around, right? Around. Yep. But the step is still there, so you're turning around here. It's a little bit different, I guess. And wild goose leaves the flock, and green dragon overturns his body. Right? So it's kind of almost the same strike for most of those, but the angles change. So you have this angle, you have upwards angle, downwards angle, and just a complete turning around, kind of backhand. You have reaching up, you have a couple of strikes here, and you have green dragon overturns his body, which is a kind of a chopping motion. So those are the basic strikes that are in the first palm change, and you'll see something like, you know, if you do it slow, and then walk. So that's kind of something that's in the palm changes. Yeah, second palm change, I like this. Here, 360. Just an advanced bit of rubbing and pushing. So, yeah, I don't know, maybe my performance is, maybe I'm tired, I don't know. Anyway, that's kind of demonstrating these principles of push and rub. And you should, again, the point I want to make is those two principles should be in every step you take, and then it's kind of our style's method or understanding that when you do that, every step you take is a way of building power. And as opposed to if you're just gliding along and that's not happening, you're smoothly walking, then, well, we don't think that you'll ever have power because you're not really training at all. You're doing is kind of a performance, and it can be really beautiful, but it's not the real salty thing that we call martial art. It's just my opinion, and I think that kind of follows with people that are in our line of Baguazhang. So that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about. Was mostly kind of the breadth of Bagua and the two fundamentals of the 8 steps that's in the walking. So okay, I hope you find something useful with that. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.